Well, he is risen. All right, let's do that again. He is risen. He is risen indeed. Thank you guys so much for coming on out. So in the very early days of Beacon, quite a few years ago now, I went skydiving. There was a group of guys that said, oh, yeah, we're going to go, we want to go. Two of us ended up going. The other guys decided maybe it wasn't the right timing. They were busy. Something came up, and that happened for months. And then finally, one of the guys, he said, that's it, we are going. And I'm like, all right. So we went right after church one day. And normally, I'm kind of like a big planner. Like I think about everything, and I want to know everything. And so like you would imagine I would have been like, what's the fabric? Is it going to hold? Like, what's the weight ratio? Is the chute big enough? Did they size it properly for me? I'd want to know everything about it. I didn't think about any of it. I actually really only had two thoughts going in, I think. I thought, well, I think it's going to be really fun, and I'm probably not going to die. That was it. That was the whole thing, and it was awesome. It was really, really great. Just because you don't believe that that's really me, here's a closer one. That's actually, now you can see it. Like, look, it's almost, right? So like this, so I did, it was awesome. I had a great time. Here's one of the things that really surprised me. No one had ever talked to me about this before, and so I hadn't really thought through it. What was really, really cool was for weeks after, I had I think of it as residual delight in it. So it was for the next days, and some might call it ongoing anxiety or something, but it felt more than that. It was and for weeks and even months, I would just be sitting there, and all of a sudden it would be like I'd feel my heart. It would start beating again, and I'd be like, oh my goodness, what is this? Like residual sort of anticipation or something like that. And all of a sudden I'd be like, oh wow, I jumped out of a plane. It was great. To this day, if I sit and think about the whole of the experience, kind of walk through it, going to the plane and going through, I get a lot of those sensations again. I can experience those emotions again. And some of you are like, that sounds horrifying. Why would you ever want to experience? Because it was exhilarating. That was it. It was leftover exhilaration. And it went on for weeks and months, and I can even tap into it now. And there are moments like this in life. There are these kind of high water mark moments. Maybe it was when you got married, or maybe it was when the first time you saw your baby roll over, or for some it might be like your first kiss, or maybe your very first puppy. And it probably won't happen for a cat, but if you have a puppy, it might be something that stays with you and lingers. And some of these things, not only can they be these amazing, incredible emotional moments that you can revisit and experience over and over, but some of them actually can grow over time. They can get deeper. They can become even more meaningful. And so you guys heard that we got a building, so congratulations, Beacon, on getting a building. Nice work. It's going to be fun. Well, the lawyer who helped us with this, his name is John. He is an old friend. He and I have been friends for decades now. Before we even started Beacon, he's been a part of our lives in one way or another. And I love this guy. He is an amazing guy. And he's still practicing law, but he's over 70 years old. And I asked him about it, and I was like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I just love work. I love the work that I do. I really enjoy it. His wife, same thing. And when you start to talk to John, and we've had a lot of time over the last few months signing all of these papers and things like that to just chit chat and talk, and we spend quite a lot of time just hanging out and talking. And he said, he was starting to talk about his home that he's been in for many, many years. He has got a house in Manhasset, and they have a summer home out east, and he tells me details. It was a little thing, and it was the beach and the water and the wind, and the way he's describing it, you can just see there's this continued delight. But if you really want to get him excited, you ask him about his wife. And he and I are chit-chatting, we're talking, and we realize that we have something in common. We are both part of the Men Who Married Way Up Club. And some of you should apply for membership. You can talk to me about it later. And so John and I are talking, and we realized both of us married women way out of our league. And mostly we've spent the rest of our lives just trying to not let them know that, trying to convince them otherwise and show them that, no, you made a right decision all those years ago. And so John and I were just reminiscing, and it struck me. Cheryl and I have been married 33 years. We've been together, I think, 35 years or something now. John has been, he's logging 50 years that they've been together or more. And he speaks now with even more love and affection, actual joyful delight in his wife. And I was like, that is awesome. I want, 20 years from now, I want to be like John. I want to have this experience that just continues to grow and get richer and get deeper. And I think, in fact, we can. We're in this series, we're talking about are you on the right track? And you can imagine your Christian journey having that same sort of experience. That it might start in a big bang, it might start with a flash, it might start on an Easter morning, and you might have had it, or maybe you didn't, maybe it was a slow roll for you. But imagine a Christian journey where it gets richer and deeper, more meaningful and more joy-filled as every year passes. You can. You can. Now, I know it's Easter, so I know that there are some folks here who are not yet Christians. I know you're here. I know that you're here because somebody asked you to come. Maybe you were dragged, maybe manipulated just a bit. Maybe some of you weren't dragged. Maybe you were wooed here. Maybe a girl wooed you. That happens. That's how I came back to church. I was wooed by a girl and then I married her. So look at that person now. And no. So you can get wooed to church. And so my hope here for you this morning, if you're here, and you're like, I'm not really sure about this whole Christian thing. My hope is that I hope to present a snapshot of Jesus that you find compelling enough that you would be willing to give Jesus a shot. That is my hope for you. And I know there are lots of other followers of Jesus here, and you're like, yes, that is my experience. I have continued to see my relationship with him grow and get deeper and get richer. But I also know, because it's Easter, there's a group of you, there's quite a few of you here today that you've never had that experience. Maybe you were raised Christian, maybe Catholic, maybe you went through CCD, or you were a Sunday school kid or something like that, or maybe your family has always been sort of nominally religious in some way. But your experience of Jesus largely avoids your emotions. You wouldn't be able to describe it as a relationship of deepening joy. I'm hoping that this Easter, maybe you can spend a few moments asking the question, why? Why do I not have that sort of experience, the kind of life-transforming experience that we hear from other followers of Jesus? We're in this series, and the premise of it is that no matter where you are right now, you might be killing it in life. You might be crushing it. You might be running from here to here and making big deals and doing all sorts of stuff. And you might be feeling like, man, life is just rocking and rolling. I am on full tilt all the time. But you might be running so fast that it doesn't even make much sense as to what's happening. Maybe you still have that unsettledness in your soul. You might also be in that place where it's just kind of like a fog. You don't know what's next. You don't really know what's going, but somewhere deep in your gut, I'd call it your soul, there's a little bit of unsettledness that says, what is this all about? So what if I get the thing, accomplish the thing, get that, do that, make this, live there, get in that neighborhood, get into that school, find that person? There's something inside that's going, am I on the right track? That's what we're going to be exploring in this series. And I hope that today gives us an introduction and an entrance into that conversation that all of us will find compelling. Now, every Sunday, we like to take a little bit of God's Word and we get to study it and see how we can apply it to our lives and all that kind of stuff. And so we're going to be doing that again today. But I want to give you a little bit of the background for it because we're going to be talking about a dinner party. It's a dinner party that was thrown by a religious elite guy, a Pharisee named Simon, and he threw it in honor of Jesus. And so in this dinner party, we think dinner party, we have a certain picture in our head, right? You go home, you have a table, you set up your table, your doors are closed. This story isn't like that at all. This is the customs of the day were very, very different. And so imagine instead you have a large house. And in this, like you've got this big house with a courtyard in the middle. And the courtyard would open up to the street. And for large events, especially banquets like this, those doors would remain open, meaning people could look in at your dinner party. It was actually very normal. In fact, they could wander even into the courtyard. And in the courtyard, there would be a dining room right off the back of the courtyard. And that dining room would be large enough to fit 3 really couches. And they would be set up in a horseshoe fashion. And the way that you would eat is not sitting there at a table like we do with a knife and a fork. You would actually put 3 guys to a table, especially in this time in history. The Jewish people would have had 3 men sitting at each of these really couches with cushions. They were slanted, and they would lean on their left elbow, and they would be eating with their right hand. So it would look something like this. And if you notice, the people lounging around the side, there'd be 3, 6, 9, 12, there could be even more. But then the middle was open so that people could come and serve. But around the back side on the edges, people could actually come and move stuff. Or you could also, if you were in the community and you knew that there was going to be some philosophical discussions or religious conversations going on among the elites, the educated people, the rabbis, you could actually come and hang out in the courtyard. You can't talk. You're not supposed to interrupt, and you're not going to go over there and help yourself to some of their food. You weren't invited in that way, but you were able to fill in around the table and sit out in the courtyard and eavesdrop on the conversation. That's the setting for this very, very famous dinner party. So we're going to be reading in Luke chapter 7, starting in verse 36. One of the Pharisees asked Jesus to have dinner with him. So Jesus went to his home and sat down to eat. When a certain immoral woman from that city heard that he was eating there, she brought a beautiful alabaster jar filled with expensive perfume. Then she knelt behind him at his feet, weeping. Her tears fell on his feet, and she wiped them off with her hair. Then she kept kissing his feet and putting perfume on them. When the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, "If this man were a prophet, he would know what kind of woman is touching him. She's a sinner." Then Jesus answered his thoughts. "Simon," he said to the Pharisee, "I have something to say to you." "Go ahead, teacher." Then Jesus told him this story. A man loaned money to 2 people, 500 pieces of silver to one and 50 pieces to another. But neither of them could repay him. So he kindly forgave them both, canceling their debts. Who do you suppose loved him more after that? Simon answered, "I suppose the one for whom he canceled the larger debt." "That's right," Jesus said. Then he turned to the woman and said to Simon, "Look at this woman kneeling here. When I entered your home, you didn't offer me water to wash the dust from my feet, but she has washed them with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You didn't greet me with a kiss, but from the time I first came in, she has not stopped kissing my feet. You neglected the courtesy of olive oil to anoint my head, but she has anointed my feet with rare perfume. I tell you, her sins, and they are many, have been forgiven. So she has shown me much love. But a person who is forgiven little shows only little love." Then Jesus said to the woman, "Your sins are forgiven." The men at the table said among themselves, "Who is this man that goes around forgiving sins?" And Jesus said to the woman, "Your faith has saved you. Go in peace." If you want to start to answer the question, am I on the right track? Then let's start with the question that's behind the whole of this text, which is, who is Jesus? Really, the first 7 chapters of Luke, all the way up to this point, all sorts of different kinds of people are asking this kind of a question. Who is Jesus? Now, the Pharisee, one of the sad parts about this is the Pharisees were these very religious and devout sorts of folks. If anyone should have been able to see that Jesus was the promised Messiah, the hope of the world, the Savior, it would have been the Pharisee. And yet, time and again throughout the whole of this narrative, we find out it's not the Pharisees, it's not the religious people who are the ones who get it. Most often, it's quite the opposite. And I think that's partly because of this. He said to himself. He said to himself, and this is like one of those moments. So for him, it was like he said to himself, if this man were a prophet. He's questioned. What we find out from Simon is he's standing in judgment over Jesus. In his own mind, he knows better. He actually thinks the way that he wants to do things and the things that he thinks are correct, the way that he thinks the world ought to work, the way that Jesus ought to respond as a man of God, the way that you handle sinners, he knows best. Jesus should learn from him. And I think a lot of us in our self-talk, whether or not we're willing to admit it out loud, we have serious doubts that Jesus is handling things the way he ought to. And I think a lot of us resist coming closer to Jesus and letting him rule and reign in our lives because of all the stuff we're really wondering and we're all thinking about. And then he lets it right out. If this man were a prophet. Now, if this man were a prophet, you know what, Phil, if this man were, go ahead and fill in your blank. What do you want to say after that? Because you want to know if he's a prophet? Well, here's the fun thing. Jesus answered his thoughts. The irony, I love this. He's like, if this man is a prophet, and then the text tells us, yeah, Jesus knows what's in his head. He gets it. He's a prophet, and he's more. In fact, soon we're going to find out that he is the unique triune God, the creator God that gave us everything. And you could ask 1,000 questions. People always do. Is he a good man? Is he a moral guy? We think he's a wise teacher. We think he's this. We think he's that. And you could look at the magazines. Look at the reels going through right now. There's all sorts of, who is Jesus? What is he? What kind of is he a bohemian sort of Eastern mystic religious guy? Was he a revolutionary of a Jewish sort to overthrow Rome? Who was this guy? Maybe you've got a ton of those questions. This text asks, I think, one of the most important. Is Jesus the Savior that I need? That I need. He starts off with this woman and he says, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. You want to know if you're on the right track? Then live at peace. Live in shalom. Live in peace with Jesus, with your Creator, with each other, with the whole of the planet, with creation. Live at peace with your past and with your present and with your future. You want to know if you're on the right track? Start here. Desire to live at peace with this Creator God. And he hits it over and over, right? He doesn't pull any punches. He's like, no, she's a sinner. No, she's got a lot of sins. There was all sorts. And her sins are many, but she has been forgiven. Says it again. Then Jesus told the woman, your sins are forgiven. Now, here's what's so cool. The grammar in this section is so clear that she's not actually working out her forgiveness right now. It's actually something that took place in the past, and we don't know how. We don't know when. But the text is written in such a way that we are supposed to assume that she has had some sort of an encounter with Jesus in the past. We don't know when, we don't know how, we don't know if she met him or if she just heard him teaching, but we do know that she took him at his word, that she experienced the forgiveness of her sins, and that when she heard he was in town, she came to bring him a gift. That was her goal. She's not working out. She actually has already gotten her forgiveness because she's trusted in Jesus. Your faith has saved you. And when I ask it like this, I think it's important for us because there's a whole lot of, almost everyone who's here today, even those who are likely dragged. If you've grown up in any form of Christianity, you would say, of course he's my Savior. Of course he is. I mean, I've known that ever since I was this big. Jesus, crucifix, cross, CC. I mean, I know. What do you mean? Why are we asking this? Seems like 101 because in this text, we get to see people's response, those who really get it and those who don't. If you really believe that you need saving, and if you really believe that he did it for you, it would change everything. It would change everything for you. And this text is here to challenge us with this truth? Is it actually what you believe? Now, throughout the Bible, the writers will often give us two types of people. So there are two types of people in the world. There are two types of people. There are the people that think there are two types of people, and there are people that don't think there are two types of people. No, I'm just kidding. That isn't actually what the scriptures say. But we do that, right? And so the reason the scriptures do this is because it likes to simplify things, so you get to identify here or here, and it's usually some sort of a continuum, but it's an important exercise. And you might say, oh yeah, of course the Bible thinks in those categories. The Bible thinks in terms of good or bad. No. They exist. It's in there. You can talk about it for sure. Those aren't the major categories, certainly not here in this text. You might say, well, I know it's not our stuff. It's not left or right? No, it's definitely not left or right. Those are how we divide ourselves. That is not how the scriptures divide us at all, left or right. It's not that way at all. The two types of people in the world are Tesla owners and non-Tesla owners. That is what the scriptures tell us. No. It's actually people who bought a Tesla and now regret it versus those who wish they had actually already purchased a Tesla. Those are the two categories. The scripture, you might go, no, obviously the scriptures talk about sinners and non-sinners. No, not exactly. The two types of people in the world are forgiven and not forgiven. That's who we see in this text. The forgiven and the not forgiven. And the stakes are life or death. And the stakes are eternal. This is the question you must ask. Am I forgiven or am I not forgiven? And it gets really interesting because you find out that there are people in the not forgiven who are law-breaking sinners, and there are people in the not forgiven who are law keepers. Both in the sinner not forgiven category. We see it certainly with the woman. We all know she's the immoral woman. Everybody knows it. The story is told with the understanding that she's an immoral woman. She's a law-breaking kind of sinner. She was eating there. She has got this alabaster jar. Now, scholars will tell us that alabaster, this is an actual alabaster jar, by the way. Actual alabaster, very cool. And it's really filled with nard. It's a type of perfume that was likely what they were talking about in the scriptures. And it does smell really quite beautiful. This nard or spike nard, or maybe it was myrrh, they say that an alabaster jar of this could be worth a year's wages. Think about that. Some $50,000, $60,000 in a little bottle of perfume. Nations traded this as currency. That's how valuable these things could be in that day and age. Now, scholars also like to point out there are only so many ways that a notoriously immoral woman could collect that kind of wealth. She is not the kind of a woman who had like one or two guys there were not her only fans. Lots of guys there were her fans. Tons. Maybe some of the guys at the table knew her that way. Certainly some around the table and in the courtyard would have. That's how they all know she's an immoral woman. You get other hints in the text as well. In that day and age, it would have been very unusual for a woman to walk up, be comfortable in the company of men like that, and touch them. The hair thing, this is even interesting. So if you were a devout Jewish woman, you would have covered your hair ever since you were a child, wore a veil of some sort, a head cover, and kept it put up. It is likely that your fiance would not see your hair until your wedding night. And so imagine this woman with her hair let down, touching a man's feet, walking in. You wonder what kind of life she lived that would allow her to do all of these things that would have been seen as very, very scandalous. She was a law-breaking kind of sinner. My personal identification is closer along these lines. I'm a younger brother kind of guy, if you're familiar with the other parable in Luke 15. I'm a younger brother kind of guy. Get out the list of 7 deadly sins and we can go right through and I can tell you stories on every one for me. a life of anger and of lust and of greed and of violence. I was an absolute bully for many years. I hurt a ton of people. I have regret to this day. I could tell you stories of lying and theft and brutality and cruelty that you would say, please don't say those things in front of my kids. Don't give them any sorts of ideas. Law breakers. And some of you here, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, if that were all, you read through this story and it says when the Pharisee who had invited him, he said, if this man were a prophet, he would know what kind of woman. She's a sinner. I tell you, her sins, they are many. Jesus, he recognizes it. He knows. These are law-breaking kinds of sinners. She's a sinner. And that's where we meet the law-keeping kinds of sinners. And here's the thing, the law-keeping kinds of sinners is tough. Because law-keeping kinds of sinners, they're really usually pretty good guys. Like, you like them. They work hard. They look out for their families. They're involved in their community. They're good guys. You would trust them. And you should. Yet, that ability to look down those perfectly sloped noses at everyone else, the ability to see the sinners all around. Jesus is highlighting this. They might be more subtle sins, arrogance, some self-righteousness. I mean, Simon had invited Jesus to a banquet as the guest of honor, and he snubs him. That's what a law-keeping kind of sinner would do. That's what we would expect. If Jesus is worthy of the banquet, then when he got there, you would have offered to have a servant wash his feet. You would have greeted him with a kiss on the cheek. You would have offered him maybe some oil. This is the kind of the point that Jesus is making. But there was a social slight, a snub, where Simon wanted to make sure everyone knew this guy's still on trial in my house. He's not the kind of guy that we're ready to give our seal of approval. We will decide if and when Jesus gets that kind of respect. I mean, this is partly what causes Jesus to be the worst dinner guest in the whole Bible. I mean, he just pulls out the punches here. And it's a bit of a startling scene. Jesus, he turned, he said to the woman, said to Simon, look at this woman kneeling here. When I entered your home, you didn't offer me water to wash the dust from my feet. But she has washed them with her tears and wiped them with her hair. Simon's like, her hair shouldn't even be showing. And Jesus is like, yeah, okay, Simon. You failed in this. She won. Wait, you're comparing her to Simon and putting her on the winning part of this story? Are you kidding me? How could you possibly think that she has anything over Simon, the Pharisee? He's not done. You didn't greet me with a kiss, but from the first time I came in, she has not stopped kissing my feet. You neglected the courtesy of olive oil to anoint my head, and she has anointed my feet with rare perfume. So you guys, some of you are going to do some like Easter brunch, or you're going to head over to someone's house. Here's a nice etiquette tip. Don't insult the host. No matter how lousy they are as hosts, especially if you're coming to our house. Do not insult the host. Can you imagine people walking in there like, oh man, Cheryl, it was okay. The meal was a little subpar. The desserts were, I feel like kind of thought you'd do a little bit better. And I don't think anybody offered me anything to drink for the first 8 minutes I was here. Can you imagine this? There is not a culture in the world where you could insult the host, especially at this time in history. This was a serious breach of etiquette. Why? Why would Jesus do this? Why would he insult? Why would he create? Because law-keeper sinners are harder to reach. This has been my experience. Over the years, I have pleaded with many people for one thing or another. Pleaded, sometimes with tears. Please, please work on your marriage. You can save this marriage. Please stop exacerbating your children. Oh, please, my goodness, please get rid of that sin. Do this thing, work on that, fix that thing. Please stop dividing the church. Please stop your gossip. I got to tell you, the hardest people to reach are very often the law-keeping sinners, the generally good people who don't really have a sense that they need a Savior or forgiveness. I think that's why Jesus has taken off the gloves here. Simon has a lifetime of self-righteous armor, and Jesus has got to punch hard to try to get through. I mean, Simon sees this woman. He sees her failings, and they are many. He sees Jesus. He recounts his failings. The whole of this text ends with a question looming over Simon and his guests and the whole of their household. Will Simon ever see his own failings? Will he? And this text ends without an answer to that question. Jesus, he tells them this story. He's like, listen, a man loaned two people money, 500 pieces, 50 pieces to the other. Neither of them could repay him. Neither could repay. And this is where the story is really starting to hit hard. So when I went to go skydiving, one of the first things I noticed when I got there was that there was a guy in the background packing the chute, right? And so he's got this parachute, and he's like 17. He's like making minimum wage. What was it at the time? $12 an hour, not even? He was like this. And I'm like, I know nothing about packing a chute. That can't be right. That just can't be right. I felt like the guy who's jumping with me, who's tandem with me, he should pack the chute. He's the only one who is invested in that chute as I am. Like, he should pack our chute for us, not this kid. I'm like, did he break up with his girlfriend? Did she break up with him? Is he just upset about life? I'm like, what is going on? Then we get out there, and I'm like, wow, I'm still watching this guy, and they point over to the planes. And I'm like, that's a small plane. Like, it's a really small plane. I was like, this is the plane you read about in the newspapers. Like, all the time. Like, really. The newspapers are what we used to look at to get, like, the current news. They were, like, big pieces of paper, and they'll tell you weird stuff that went on in the world. Now it's like you get it from TikTok. But so, like, I'm like, but these are the things that go down. Like, this is a problem. This is a really small plane. And then to make it even worse, after you sign away all of your rights in life and the family can't sue and all of this kind of stuff, then the pilot comes out, and he is a large man. Now, the only guy that decided to jump with me was also a very big guy. He was like 6'4", 250-something pounds, solid muscle. They put their biggest guy with him to jump. Then it was me and another small guy. And the four of us were heading over, and the pilot, he says, oh, man, we're going to need the whole runway. What do you mean? He's like, yeah, we got to go all the way to the grass on this side. Oh, why? And he says, oh, because, with this much weight, I'm not sure we're going to clear the trees. Clear the trees on the other side of the runway? Are you kidding me? They're like 30 feet tall. We should be way past the trees after this super long runway. He's like, yeah, we got to go for the whole thing. I'm like, so you hear this little rubber band. And at some point you realize, wow, if we go down now, I'm dead. But the thing is, it doesn't happen at 10,000 feet. You're going up, and all of a sudden you're like somewhere around 30 feet, like right when you break over the top of some of the trees, you're like, oh yeah, that would do it. That's far enough. Like, now I think if I fell from here, I'd be dead. But back then it was like 30 feet for whatever reason. I thought I could survive it. I think it's like 8 feet. But I was like, yep. From here on out, it's dead. I'm dead. And there's no chute yet. You're not strapped in on anything. What are you going to do? Strap yourself into the airplane? That's the problem right now, is the airplane. And so, and all of a sudden you're like, 1,000 feet. It doesn't matter. At some point, it doesn't matter. 1,000 feet, 10,000. I didn't even care anymore. I'm like, just whatever you want. It doesn't matter. I'm dead. All right, so here's the pop quiz for Easter morning. If you fall from 1,000 feet out of an airplane without a parachute, and you fall from 10,000 feet, Who is better off? Yes. No one. You're both dead. Splat. Just like that. Splat. And the Bible story is telling us. So it's saying, no, there's 50 pieces, there's 500. It doesn't matter how many pieces of silver if you can't repay it. Simon, you think you're a 50 silver piece kind of a guy. You're not. Because you can't repay any of it. And the Bible story tells us that we are plunging to our deaths. All of humanity, unforgiven, we are plunging to our death. And what awaits us is judgment, hell, and eternal separation from God. That's what awaits for us. You're talking about one epic splat. Simon, he's not hearing it. This unnamed heroine of ours, she gets it. And it leads to this joyful devotion, this utter and complete surrender. We're gonna do a reflection time here. I'm asking the band to come out and they can start playing. And I want you to give me just a little bit of your imagination here this morning. All right, this alabaster jar for me has become an important symbol over these last few weeks that I've been thinking about the passage. But we're about to get just slightly past what we know from the text. This is my imagining of this scene, and I'm just asking you to indulge with me for just a moment. If you were there, let's say you got an invite to the party, or more likely, like the rest of us, you would just have been in the courtyard milling about. Maybe you squeezed in and you got a seat behind them so you could hear more of the conversation. And at first, it would have looked like a fairly normal dinner, but you would have noticed that the host, Simon, had snubbed the guest of honor. You would have seen it. You would have wondered, oh, there's something going on here, because he should have done this or that or the other thing, and he didn't. But then you would have noticed this woman who probably had already been there. She'd already made her way into the back, and she saw this snub as well. I actually think that's what happened. She came with an alabaster jar. She did not come with water. She didn't come with towels. She did not plan on washing the feet of Jesus. Why would she need to? Obviously, the host will do that. I think she saw the snub. And I think she entered into the rejection that Jesus was feeling. And I think her gratitude mixed with her horror at his treatment had her cry. And I think as she continued to cry, she continued to just, with gratitude overflowing in her heart, she felt the gaze of these men, the judgmental, critical gaze, no doubt. But fortunately for her, she had been raised in the school of hard knocks. So I think she, maybe more than most any woman of her day, could walk into that space and not wither under the glare of these self-righteous men. And I think with courage, she rectified this social wrong. But after she wet his feet with her tears, she could have used her robe. But she didn't. I think she used her hair because I think she was making a pledge of loyalty. She had already gotten her forgiveness, and I think she let down her hair and she said, you all know what this means. I am wholly dedicated to him. Too much forgiveness comes, much gratitude and love flows. Simon, of course, you would at this point be wondering, oh my goodness, so much tension is building in this room. What is happening? All of these people staring at her. Now, if you had not noticed her for one reason or another, you soon would, because she opens up this alabaster jar, and all of a sudden, the room begins to smell very different. Not like a whole bunch of hot, sweaty guys about ready to eat, but all of a sudden, the smell of myrrh or spikenard or some other rare scent starts to waft through the air. And all of a sudden you start thinking, oh, this is a very decadent scent. It's a very sensual scent, but it doesn't really quite match the moment. We have this guy, Simon, and he's holding all of this together. You can tell he's just about to break out in a fit of rage. And you've got this woman with utter and complete abandon, laying it all out in front of everyone. And she begins to anoint his feet, and she keeps kissing them. This kind of devotion, some would have been embarrassed, others humiliated, others passing judgment. And I wonder how many would have been moved in that moment to say, my goodness, something beautiful is happening here. Jesus certainly did. No hint of criticism, no hint of judgment. He knew something beautiful was happening. In my imagining of this scene, there's a reason she brought this. So back in our day, we would go on you would do these big revivals, and there would always be some horrible sinner who decided to come to Jesus. And so let's say it was a drug addict. And you know what he would do? He would grab up all of his drug paraphernalia or his inventory, and he would bring it, and he would lay it out there, or he would destroy it. They would destroy the thing and lay out the thing that was the symbol of their sin and their wickedness. If you were addicted to porn, you would take your magazine collection and your VHS tapes, and you would bring them and you would burn them there or destroy them or bury them before Jesus. It would be an act of utter devotion and surrender, and even publicly so. Some of you remember these days. This was something that many of us had participated in. There's a story of a Hindu woman, and she came to faith, and she went to her house after she accepted Jesus. Her sins were forgiven. She went to her house and she gathered up all of the household ancestral gods that she had there. And she went out into the woods and she buried them in the forest. And I just can't help but wonder if this woman, this is the tool of her trade. Besides her body, this would be how she made her living. And in my imagining of this, she is coming to Jesus and she's saying, this is yours now. I'm not going to need it anymore. And she pours it out there as a sacrifice to say thank you. Thank you for the forgiveness of sins. Would you stand here all across this space? Just close your eyes for a moment. And maybe you're here this morning and you are feeling like this woman. But maybe before this woman has experienced the forgiveness of Jesus. Maybe today is your day to take the whole of that alabaster jar and lay it out before him. Others are here and you're saying, I have never had a life-transforming experience with Jesus, and I would just encourage you, think through what salvation really means. Maybe he's stirring up something in your heart now. Maybe you've never really surrendered. Maybe you always kept him at arm's length. Maybe you've never pledged your life by letting down your hair or by pouring out your offering or by crying at his feet. And maybe today he's calling you into that sort of intimacy with the promise that it will grow deeper and richer over the whole of your life. Maybe this is the day that all, whether you're a lawbreaker or a law keeper kind of sinner, enters into the part of humanity that's forgiven, that has hope because of the death of Jesus on the cross and his power over death at the resurrection on that first Easter morning. Father, stir up hearts even now. Speak past the pain, speak into the sin, into the rebellion. Get past the self-righteousness, Lord. Breakthrough. In this next song, the band is going to lead us through a song, and while they do, I'm going to invite you to come to the tables that are scattered throughout. There's 3 up here, there's 4 or 5 in the middle. And on each of these tables, there is a little couple of glasses filled with diffuser reeds, and each one has the scent of an ancient perfume, myrrh, something that might very well have been wafting through that room. And I'm going to encourage you to come forward and take these as a sign that you want to move further and closer and deeper with Jesus. And then I'm going to encourage you to keep it with you. You can put it in your car. You can put it, stick it somewhere where you'll be reminded of it for a little while as the scent continues to waft around you or maybe even on you. Allow that to remind us of this incredible love that Jesus has. Maybe it'll encourage you to take another step closer of surrender, receiving his forgiveness, trusting in him, and allowing that to transform everything. So as they sing, please come and take one of these reeds.